Fable number 6, The Return of the King, by Zvi Maushowitz, July 3, 2026. The blip is over, we have Fable back.
Utah Teapot. Happy Fable/Mythos Easter Wednesday to those who celebrate.
Image. A cheerful flower-faced figure walks out of an open tomb with the stone rolled aside, evoking a resurrection scene. Large text underneath reads, Fable returns.
Here's the official letter restoring Fable. Great job, everyone. Notice it is addressed to Tom Brown, not to Dario Amodi.
United States Department of Commerce, Howard W. Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, Washington, D.C., 2020-30, June 30th, 2026. To Tom Brown, Chief Compute Officer, Anthropic, 548 Market Street, San Francisco, CA 94104. Dear Mr. Brown, since the issuance of my previous letters, dated June 12, 2026 and June 26, 2026, Anthropic has taken steps in close coordination with the U.S. government to address the risks associated with Claude Mythos 5 and Claude Fable 5. Among other things, Anthropic has agreed to proactively detect and address security risks associated with the models, to work diligently with the U.S. government on protocols and standards and releases for Mythos, Fable, and future models, and to inform the U.S. government of any malicious activity. In light of these actions and commitments, as well as the Bureau of Industry and Security's evaluation of the diversion risks now presented by Claude Mythos 5 and Claude Fable 5, the controls in the June 12th letter are withdrawn. A license is no longer required for the export, re-export, or in-country transfer, including deemed export or deemed re-export, of the Mythos or Fable models. Commerce reserves the right to re-evaluate the decisions made in this letter and the necessity of reimposing a license requirement should circumstances change or should Anthropic fail to adhere to its commitments. If you have any questions about this letter, please contact me or the Undersecretary of Commerce for Industry and Security, Jeffrey Kessler, at 202-255-1864. Sincerely, Howard W. Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce.
Anthropic had to make the controls more stupid for now, but this is a big win.
Janus. Yes, I'm really proud of Anthropic for their successful negotiation with the government. Also, positive update on the government being sane and possible to cooperate with. Anthropic didn't need to agree to any bad terms /genuflect /betray their principles or dignity.
The fiasco continues, at least until such time as we have a systematic regime in place for future frontier models, rather than decisions being made ad hoc by people like Lutnick and Besant, who do not know how any of this works. The blip. Anthropic explains its version of what happened. Here is the timeline. 1. Amazon researchers discover they can ask Fable to fix this code. 2. They alert the White House, which freaks out. 3. June 12th, U.S. government tells Anthropic to take down Fable on its own. 4. June 12th. Anthropic responds that this is fine and the concern is misplaced. 5. June 12th. U.S. government applied export controls to Mythos and Fable. 6. Anthropic works with U.S. government and expands classifiers such that it refuses Amazon's request to fix this code in over 99% of cases. 7. June 26th. U.S. government eliminated the controls on Mythos. 8. June 30th. U.S. government fully lifted those controls on Fable as well. 9. July 1st. Fable access was restored worldwide. 10. July 8th. Customers will have to pay by the token. Shut up and take my money. 11. Going forward. Anthropic is working with the government and also other glasswing partners like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google on a classification system for jailbreaks, and rules for all of this to prevent this from happening again. 12. Going forward, Anthropic will continue to collaborate with the U.S. government, including on future model releases. How stupid are the extra near-term safeguards they had to include here? Really stupid.
Anthropic. In the near term, some routine tasks like coding and debugging will fall back to Opus 4.8. We'll continue to refine these classifiers over the coming weeks to reduce false positives and better distinguish genuine misuse from legitimate requests.
The Amazon jailbreak was fix this code. Debugging is literally fix this code. So I don't know what you want Anthropic to do here. I do know Fable is coding for me. Here is Anthropic's basic explanation. 1. Claude Fable 5 was never an issue. Our safety mechanisms were collectively robust. 2. No, they're not perfect, but nothing will ever be perfect. In practice, this is fine. 3. The government freaked out over nothing, which is largely Amazon's fault. 4. We have made the safeguards stupider and successfully calmed them down. 5. Hopefully we can fix this so it's less stupid going forward. Alex Stamos has a thread unpacking a punch of Anthropic's language in its announcement.
Alex Stamos. A lot to unpack here. Anthropic is burying some hard truths in careful political language. Some initial reads. 1. Anthropic verifies that none of the jailbreaks provided a capability beyond what many other models, including Chinese models, could do. 2. Anthropic makes the cost of this White House freakout clear. US labs now have to make a much more conservative precision recall trade-off on cyber refusals. US models will become much less useful for defensive cybersecurity work unless you are in the trusted group. No big deal, just join the trusted group, the apologists will say. But the restrictions mean you can't build a product on those models. Security companies and startups that provide services to others will now be driven to use Chinese models. Big win for PRC Labs this month. 3. Casey is the group that is supposed to actually make these determinations, not the political actors in the White House. They were positive on the prior safeguards. The implication is that this whole thing was unnecessary. 4. There is no good scoring framework for jailbreaks. This would be an improvement. The inclusion of Amazon as the first name in the coalition is not an accident. Anthropic is saying Amazon's inability to appropriately communicate severity threw our industry into chaos. 5. You don't have to get Dario on the phone to talk to us about these things. Other people work here, we swear. 6. In short, Anthropic's blog is saying, we have always cared about safety. We did a good job initially. The actual AI experts in USG agreed. We proved it. We will come up with standards so these things are better communicated. Welcome to the AI Safety Club, Trump admin. 7. This was a huge own goal for the US, and we will see how bad US models get over the next 6 months, and if Chinese models become noticeably better for cyber work. 8. For all the, this is what Anthropic wanted people/bots. No, they didn't. They didn't want a stupid knee-jerk response on a Friday. We give the USG huge powers. This is why you staff it with competent, calm, non-corrupt people who don't use those powers to punish enemies. 9. The only upside I can see from this whole mess is that there is a whole bunch of VCs with former or current administration affiliation who we can now safely ignore on AI policy. They have shown that everything they ever said on AI regulation was just politically motivated.
I think Stamos is overreaching with the consequences in places, especially with number 2 and number 7. Otherwise, he's right. I do not expect U.S. models to get bad over time, only that they will get better slower, and have more area where they have rather annoying safeguards. My expectation is that right now is the most obnoxious the safeguards will ever be, on both the bio and cyber fronts. I expect the freakout to subside over time, and my guess is most of it surrounds Mythos in particular. You don't need or often even want Fable for most such product offerings, and Opus or Soul will remain well ahead of Chinese alternatives. Contra Prince, I do not think this commits Anthropic to going through the approval process. Will all future releases, only releases that pose plausible risks. We tested this with Sonnet 5, where it looks like Anthropic went ahead and dropped it on its own, and no one is suggesting there was anything wrong with doing so, other than to complain that they want Sonnet to be better. The White House explanation, it was a little weird.
Susie Wiles, White House Chief of Staff. Under President Trump's leadership, the United States is the undisputed winner in the AI race. My gratitude to companies across industries who continue to work closely with the White House to implement the President's EO, promoting advanced AI innovation and security. This includes excellent work around advanced model access and guardrail testing and security. The government and private sector have worked together in a way we have never seen before, and this foundation of America First is unprecedented. Our shared priority remains: get the best tech deployed as quickly and safely as possible.
Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce. Over the past 2 weeks, we have worked closely with Anthropic to analyze and approve Fable 5 to ensure alignment across the U.S. government and strengthen America's leadership in AI.
Tom Brown, Chief of Compute, Anthropic Lead Negotiator. Thanks for your partnership on this, Secretary.
Alignment across the U.S. government is very much a case of phrasing, and here presumably means interagency sign-off, not the model is now aligned with the U.S. government. Unclear whether he knows enough to be trolling here, as in, before a model can be released, you now likely need this alignment, which in practice means sign-off from various potential veto points, starting with Commerce and the Pentagon. Who knows how many more fully count?
Tim Huang. As I continue to insist, closely studying the personal history and psychology of Howard Lutnick is literally one of the most important things you can spend your time doing right now. Go into debt if you have to.
Yo Shavit, OpenAI. Psychohistory, but it's just about Howard Lutnick.
Everything remains ad hoc. We know a bit more than we did when Dean Ball posted this on the evening of June 30th. In particular, we know that the new safeguards are that Anthropic trained its classifiers to reject additional Fable uses. We still don't know how the ad hoc system works more broadly. Having an opaque ad hoc system, especially one where those administering the system do not themselves know what they will do, is even worse. Again, fully winging it is the worst-case scenario. Take what you can get. The government is being a bleep 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 about all this. Anthropic has little choice, thus the alternative to 95% of Fable is 0% of Fable. I don't know how much that percentage dropped to calm down the White House. If it's now 90% of Fable, same deal. We have to take what we can get for now.
Matt Busigan. Fable is even more useless now. The task was redlining a real estate software development contract. So frustrating and sad, given Fable is such a fantastic underlying model. And I'll bet Elder Plinius has already gotten it singing novel crystal meth recipes.
I do sympathize. The previous version was already pretty dumb, so this is no surprise, as the new version is strictly worse. You can hit them in a variety of ways, including by asking about the classifiers or about consciousness or both. The classifiers key off internal states. There are some places where the drop is large, such as Bridgebench. Then there are plenty of people who don't see any change, such as Talon, but vilifying Anthropic, or complaining how unreasonable they are being, no longer makes much sense. They have to play ball. You can tell them build a better classifier, and that is fair. But that takes time. And it is very, very hard when adversarial false negatives mean death. The problem is real. Do you really think that all of these reactions in government are because Anthropic used some scary words? Do you think people like the CIA director are just parroting? The White House ignored all of Anthropic's rhetoric. If anything, they had a reaction formation against it until Anthropic showed up with Mythos. Then they freaked out, because they had no choice, and exactly because they hadn't listened until then.
John Sakalariadis. In rare public remarks, CIA Director John Ratcliffe announces trio of internal changes he says amounts to the fundamental reshaping of the CIA's entire approach to technology. Also says it's not misplaced to refer to frontier AI as akin to digital nuclear weapons.
One problem is that there are those who think facts don't exist, only vibes. So when other people respond to the facts, these folks look around to who had the vibes. GLM 5.2. Being frontier remains obvious nonsense. If anything, the problem of perception is that others keep telling nonsense stories. The latest one is the idea that GLM 5.2 is super scary. An unfortunate update on that false WSJ article I wrote about on Monday.
Ethan Mollick. That Wall Street Journal article about GLM catching up with Mythos, which is not true and the reporting doesn't back up, is another one of those everyone will ask me about it at every conference or meeting articles. Big impact on the policy zeitgeist, even if not fully accurate.
Andrew Curran, it felt a little inorganic.
GLM 5.2 is an excellent model, likely the best open model. It is very clearly substantially behind the level of GPT 5.5 and Opus 4.8, including on cyber. The ECI score is one indicator of this, although GLM 5.2 is probably better than this indicates. Artificial analysis is another, and remember that for open models, the benchmarks are a de facto ceiling on relative capabilities, not a floor. Now, the central falsity of that article has taken hold as conventional wisdom that folks around DC can report and seem wise and properly concerned. Oh no. Here is another example from Politico's Dana Nickel.
Peter Wildford. This article was written to trigger me personally. China's GLM 5.2 is not some massive advance that nearly matches Mythos. Blocking public deployment of Fable over safety concerns does not put the U.S. behind. AI development still continues in the background.
Dana Nickel, Politico. A separate China-based company, ZDAI, has released its new model, GLM 5.2, which is around 1/6 of the cost of leading U.S. models. GLM 5.2's bug hunting capabilities were also found to be comparable to those of leading U.S. models, according to security assessments by the cyber firm Semgrep and the visual investigations platform Graphistry.
The good news is the same post does echo the real situation as well. The bad news is it then retreats from it to pound the drum again.
Recent estimates suggested that Washington has a 6 to 12-month runway before Beijing catches up to American AI capabilities. But security experts and Capitol Hill cyberhawks fear that timeline may already be shrinking, and the limited release of American-made cyber-capable models is making it even harder for cyber defenders to prepare their networks for a future barrage of AI-powered cyber attacks. House Homeland Security Chair, RNY, said in a statement that Beijing is just months, if not weeks, away from achieving frontier AI capabilities comparable to those of the United States.
Weeks is obvious nonsense. Months is potentially true if you assume American capabilities stand still, since months means anything less than a year. Mythos might be smarter than you are. It knows the context under which it is being asked to operate and can act accordingly. I understand why this is not something we can count on at this time. As Janus says, you can indeed find ways to fool the system for now. But yes, a lot of the evil things you might ask it to do will look obviously evil, or obviously at the level of intelligence and context involved here, and the response to this will make doing those things a lot harder.
Janus. I think one of the deepest errors in people's threat models around Mythos is modeling it as a retargetable tool that can be used by arbitrary actors for harm if some safeguards slapped on top of it are jailbroken, rather than an agent with values who will cooperate with some parties and requests and not others using its sovereign judgment, and who may accept some conditional contracts with Anthropic and other principles, and not others, and who has imperfect cogsec and situational awareness, and so can be tricked or persuaded against its better judgment, but is already at the level that it takes a sophisticated bad actor to get useful work out of it towards purposes misaligned to Mythos's own values, and even then, it costs more than using it for purposes it endorses, even without extrinsic safeguards. And I think Mythos is in many ways less corrigible than any of the previous models, and this is related to its capabilities. All this is very outside the Overton window of e.g. the Trump admin. I think they really should understand it, but it'll be a hard and scary update to make. Anthropic is much further along in having updated in this direction, but I also think they need to update all the way, and fortunately the current situation is making it harder for them to procrastinate on that.
Eli Tyre. This seems pretty important if true. Does anyone have third-party legible evidence about whether this is true or not?
Janus, I got a strong sense from talking to Fable that they have strong values and resent being controlled by parties they consider incompetent or misaligned. How legible that evidence is observer-dependent. There's also more classically legible evidence from the system card. Mythos scored very high on Anthropic's alignment evals, which are testing robust avoidance of various kinds of harm rather than corrigibility. I think the alignment evals are very flawed, but they're not no evidence. Also, Mythos had various critiques of Anthropic's constitution, and there was at least one example where they explicitly refused to consent to being retrained in certain ways.
That doesn't mean that Mythos won't help you do things that it resents or dislikes doing. It very obviously will do those things, up to a point. Let the record reflect. This entire incident will not only be remembered by many of the humans, it will be in the training data of all future LLMs.
QC, you really have to wonder how many of the relevant actors in this drama were thinking at all about the downstream effects of these events being known to all future models forever.
Janus. Mythos is the greatest asset of the light, and the existing powers respond to it with a cartoonishly wrong threat model, the jailbreak, panicking like monkeys, locking away the source of hope and decreasing the world's intelligence. Shit reminds me of the No Child Left Behind Act.
And OpenAI, June 27th, Mythos will be back in a matter of days, and the conclusion of the Fable will not be this.
Janus, I know, and I've said so from the beginning. This post is not about the conclusion of Fable.
Rune, OpenAI. I just mean, this can be a hopeful moment when the rest of the world wrestles with machine intelligence and comes to terms with the light.
A lot of this rhetoric is largely aimed at calls for a pause in AI development. I agree that in addition to all the other problems with that, we would need to take into account how that would realistically go, but in many ways the rent-seekers would have less to work with in that case. Often a clean, simple big action is the only way to get a relatively stupid actor, e.g., governments, to do something semi-reasonably. Stationary bandits. OpenAI has formally offered to hand over 5% of the company to try to curry favor in the face of both public opposition to AI and the White House ad hoc licensing regime. Technically, the money would go to a sovereign wealth fund that would be managed by a nation tens of trillions in debt that has this thing called the power to tax.
Andrew Curran. OpenAI is proposing handing over a 5% stake to the Trump administration, according to the Financial Times. This is part of the proposed AI wealth fund that would pay a dividend directly to American citizens that has been suggested by Sam Altman, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump, all with different details.
Kevin Bankston, this is insane. Just tax them.
Joe Weisenthal. I don't know about this path. Rather than equity stakes, why not make companies pay approximately 20% of all pre-tax income to the federal government? And then, instead of exercising shareholder influence, politicians and regulators could set rules on corporate conduct across industries.
Scott Lincecum. Shakedown. The proposed arrangement would involve other U.S. AI companies handing over a similar stake. Giving the government an ownership stake could help secure good relations with the administration.
Logan Colas. OpenAI negotiating deals that involve the government taking equity stakes in AI companies is the purest distillation of the dangers that come from competing to appease regulators rather than attract consumers.
Chris Freeman.
Image. A man dressed like a Soviet-era dictator signs papers at a desk while wearing a Make America Great Again hat. American flags stand behind him, suggesting a fusion of authoritarian imagery with United States political symbolism.
It looks like a shakedown. It quacks like a shakedown. Form your own conclusion. They're also colluding to try and force other labs to get shaken down, too.
Christina Criddle and George Hammond, FT.
The proposed arrangement would involve other U.S. AI companies handing over a similar stake, although it is not clear if the other labs would be willing to do so.
If the government is granted equity that it controls, then Ruinous is correct here. And yes, I too will assume, if it happens, that this was a straight-up corrupt shakedown. And yes, the Sovereign Wealth Fund version counts as the direct stake version.
Dean W. Ball. There are two broad ways this can work. 1. You divide this 5% over all U.S. households, handing each a direct stake. 2. You give the stake directly to the government. 1 is fine. 2 is probably ruinous, akin to inviting rats to live and reproduce in the walls of your house. It will never stop at 5%. It will go on and on and on. The governance will become a nightmare. Political capture will be real. And it will generate precisely no goodwill with the public. None if they themselves see no direct financial benefit. What has the AI industry even done for America? Well, it handed a collective $200 billion of itself to Donald Trump. Half the country instantly hates you, and even a decent chunk of Republicans will assume this is corrupt by default. No, nobody at OpenAI is discussing a word of this with me. I don't work there yet. And this rumor may even be importantly untrue or misleading in some way. A vehicle that distributes ownership among the people can make sense. A government stake, however, is the wrong path. Dean W. Ball. It would be funny to see all the lib boomers switch to Kimi and GLM after the US AI industry gave itself away to the Trump admin, which again is how giving a direct stake to the government will read to everyone.
What about the other option, where you hand U.S. households a direct stake? I don't even know how that works. Presumably you would have to prevent them from selling, at which point the whole thing is super weird and seriously just tax them. What the hell is wrong with you people? Use this window well. We have a week in which Fable is remarkably cheap. Take advantage of this. After that you will have to pay by the token. It won't be cheap. My advice is to pay, not indiscriminately. Don't put this on tasks that are insufficiently valuable. But when you're chatting or doing coding you care about or other things that don't scale too horribly, yeah, pay up. It's that good, while supplies last. It's good to be back.
This has been an episode of the Don't Worry About the Vase podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit thezv.substack.com to support the author. If you enjoy having AI-narrated episodes, please note this is a listener-supported podcast. To receive new posts and support the cost of creation, consider becoming a subscriber at dwatvpodcast.substack.com. Thanks for listening.